So I'm gonna talk a little bit about progressive web apps and board games. But first things first, I know there will be lunch at 1 p.m. So I don't want to stand between you and lunch. So I hope I will have the presentation as concrete as possible. And if you have any questions, you can reach me afterwards. Okay, so I'm running the Enclave Games studio. It's a huge company consisting of me and my wife, and we make games. And you may know me from some other projects like the JS13K Games competition or the weekly newsletter, etc. And today I'm going to talk about mixing up realities, but it's not going to be about AR or VR. So this approach will be quite different, but still we'll try to mix the physical one with digital. So how many of you play board games? Oh, that's nice. Do you know the Neuroshima Hex board game? Yay, quite a few. Okay, that's nice. So I'm running the Neuroshima Hex fan site since about, I don't know, 2010 or something like that. And it's quite fun. And the community behind the game itself is quite active, I would say. You can find many fun add-ons to the game. I tried building one myself, but it was really hard to create something because you have to print it, paint it on the cardboard, etc., etc. So my super popular add-on to the game created around 2014 had about 3 players, me and my friends. Fast forward to 2018. Let's focus on the digital side of mixing realities. I have written the series of articles for MDN Web Docs about progressive web apps. And I've used an example application which were super simple. The app was showcasing some of the games from the competition from last year, from 2017. And the competition itself was about creating games in 13 kilobytes. So that was quite challenging. But this also gives me the opportunity to play with the games, play with the concept of progressive web apps, because there were, like, for example, last year we had, or this year we had 274 games submitted to the competition. So I could play with some data and create the application in a way that, for example, I was using the progressive loading, which you may probably know from the term lazy loading, but progressive loading sounds more professional, but it's exactly the same. So this year, the competition had the offline theme, which I created myself, probably subconsciously because I used that to my advantage this year, because I have created an entry myself for the competition, and I wanted to, because offline you can interpret it in a way that a service worker can help you make your application work offline, but you can also add the offline aspect of the board games, for example. So I decided to get the add-on I was working on in 2014 and see if I can do something with it, if I can create an app that will serve this add-on in a way that you can play the board game and have the application on your smartphone, and this can add up to the experience, because distributing a website versus a physical piece of cardboard was a lot better. So I ended up with something called Hex Roulette, which is basically a Wheel of Fortune, and that's it. So the idea was that you have a few extra tiles with some bonuses. And so you can basically hit the spin button and you either win one of the 5 bonuses or you lose some points. And you could try that once every turn. So the idea is super simple. It was created in, I don't know, a day or two. But it shows how easy it is to create something and add progressive web app features. So you can basically create anything and make it into a native-like application that can be distributed no matter the operating system. It was, for me personally, it was the first time since 2010 when I was able to mix board games, making mobile games, and organizing the JS13K Games competition. But why am I telling you all this? Because the Hex Roulette game or application or add-on was created with the PWA features. And the core idea of progressive web apps is that you can build an experience using web APIs that are already there, and you can make it look like a native application. So you can build something with the web technologies. How many of you know JavaScript? Okay, so you already have the advantage. Those are the APIs you probably already used, at least some of them. So with that, you can build something that will be able to run on any device, on any system. It can be cross-system, cross-device, and it can bring the experience of building native applications. We will quickly go through the most important things that PWA brings. We will see how to have the game works offline with service workers, how to make the game or application installable, so you can install a web app as it would be a native application. You don't have to have your app in any of the stores. You can just send a link to someone, they can install it on their phone and use that as a native application. And you can also take the advantage of sending notifications and pushing them to the device. So this is the folder structure of the Hex Roulette application. The only two interesting things besides the source folder is the web manifest file and the service worker JavaScript file. So manifest file, if you know JSON, it's just a structure in which you will add the most interesting information, most crucial information about your application. So it contains the name, some short description, icons, etc., etc. It's not too complicated. It's just the information that your app will be bringing to all the, like for the browser to properly show the name, the icons, etc. For example, on the pop-up, on the banner, or however you will interact with the application. So the service worker is basically something working in the middle between the network and the application that can serve. For example, the main purpose of the service worker is to serve content from cache instead of network, but it can do so much more. You can rewrite something on the fly, load resources in the background, etc., etc. So for example, the application could be super lightweight, and then all the heavy stuff could be downloaded with the progressive loading later on in the background. Service workers' life cycle is quite simple, I would say. First, you have to register it from your application, and then the service worker JavaScript file can be used, in which you can install it. The optional thing is to activate it, and by activation, I mean you can do some additional steps if you need them. And then it's all about sending push notifications from the server to the application, or getting new content from the server. So registering a service worker is rather easy. I would say it's built in the browser's engine, and you can use the navigator keyword. And it's as simple as just writing navigator service worker register, and you're pointing to the to your JavaScript file. This is already in the service worker JavaScript file, so you can basically add a listener for the install event. And for example, in this case, when we install the service worker, it already can cache all the files that you will tell it to cache. So for example, this first install, when visiting the website, will make the service worker copy all the files, move it to the cache, and next time you will be visiting the website, there will be no need of downloading resources, because it will already serve the files from the cache. If you have your content cached, and you want to have something new sent to the application, you can fetch it. And basically, so it would be easier than this, but this case is more like bulletproof one, in which a few things is checked. So fetching means you can download something on request. So if you want to, there was an update of something, new addition, etc., you can fetch new content, download it, put it in the cache, and then it can be again used with the files from other files from the cache. Having PWAs implemented, we can imitate the native behavior of the browser, of the application. So two most important, two most interesting cases are add to home screen and push notifications. So as I mentioned earlier, add to home screen means you can point someone to the URL, and when they launch the application on their phones, they will already have a banner to install the application, and after clicking yes or OK or whatever, it will be visible as an icon on their phone. It can look more or less like this. The first screen asks for adding to the home screen. The second one shows you how the icon looks like, how the name looks like. You can add it, and then it ends up on your desktop, on your screen of the phone. And the next thing is notifications. There are some issues with developers of the apps that abuse that. So if you want to develop something, it's important to not flood the user with the notifications, because at some point they will just click never and totally forget about that. So it's important to somehow balance that, but the technology is already there. If you create web apps, you can already use something that was restricted to native applications for years. So you can create a JavaScript application that will be able to send notifications to the web application installed on someone else's device. You can find some of the resources on the MDN web docs, among the others, and I'm recommending that not only because I wrote the progressive part, but because it's a good source of knowledge. But of course, there are other places where you can read about those. So to quickly summarize the talk. If you know JavaScript, it's already quite easy to implement. You're using the exact same web APIs you already know. If you don't know them, it should be fairly easy to learn about them. It's framework independent. I haven't shown you anything, like not a single line of the game engine I'm using, because it can work with anything. You can make games with Phaser and implement the PWA features, but you can also use React or Vue or whatever, and it's either built into the framework, or you will probably find a plugin for that already. It's using web technologies to make the application look like native. So it's taking the best things out of both worlds. So you can create something with JavaScript and make it look like the native application. And I think it's the next step after responsive web design. How many of you used responsive web design in development? So it was a huge buzzword a few years ago. People were thinking whether it will be used or not. And right now, basically, most of the people forgot about the word because it's just the way we are building websites, right? So it's the first approach that you would do building websites for mobile. So I think it will be the same with progressive web apps. So you will hear about progressive web apps, but the more you use it, the less we will probably use the keyword itself, because in the next few years it will be the normal, the usual, the default way of building not only mobile applications, but applications for mobile and desktop and all the other platforms you can imagine. You can even add PWA features to WebVR or WebAR applications, and it works perfectly fine. So I highly recommend trying that out. If you want to ask any questions, you can approach me. I think lunch will be served in a few minutes. So if you build something with PWAs, please let me know. And if those will be games, then even more. Thank you.